Welcome to episode 19 of Fascinating, a Star Trek podcast. Tomorrow is yesterday.
In this week's episode, the Enterprise is thrown backwards in time by an anomaly, finding themselves orbiting 1960s Earth. When a United States Air Force pilot is beamed aboard, the risks of a future-altering paradox become clear. Kirk and the crew must destroy all records of their visit and return the pilot. But can they do it before too many people discover their time-travelling interventions?
Computer, you will not address me in that manner. Computer.
Computed, dear.
Ian, how we doing?
Don't address me in that manner.
Sorry, Ian. That's worse.
It's much worse. Yeah, just don't do that way either.
Especially with the hand movements and gestures.
Yeah, please stop looking at me.
Okay. How are things?
Yeah, not too bad. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, yeah. I like this episode.
I think it's maybe one of my favourites so far.
I was going to say that. I think it is my favourite. There was a hint of Back to the Future and maybe even the Terminator in this.
Yep, definitely.
I thought.
A few things along those lines.
Mm-hmm. And who knows which came first? When you're talking time travel.
Yeah, well, one of my favourite things about Star Trek, and we've talked about this, I think, before, it's the variety that you get. There's not the same episode over and over again, just repeated.
Well, you say that.
Sometimes you get things repeated, but then they throw in something like this, which is so different from what we had last week.
Although we do have someone been trapped down in another planet or place. They can't get back up.
Do we, though?
This week we do, yeah.
That's not really the problem, is it?
It's not the problem, but there was a
moment when they didn't, yeah. Okay.
But no, a fun episode.
I think we've discussed before, but you're quite a fan of time travel generally.
I am. And I made the point in the first episode that I don't consider myself a sci-fi fan, but obviously time travel is very much sci-fi genre.
Yeah, well, shall we dig into this one?
Why not? Let's crack on.
I love this opening.
Yeah, the exterior of a military airbase.
Well, just the entire pre-credit sequence, the fact that they didn't have any of the usual cast in it. You barely saw the Enterprise until the very last second, and it was just presented from a different point of view. If you'd never seen Star Trek before, you would think these guys were the main cast of the show. Yeah,
I was going to say that. It's quite daring, taking a bit of a risk, because I assume that if you're a producer, you always want to identify your show from the off so that people know what they're getting, or they recognise a show. And in doing this, you're not.
Well, I wonder how many folk, when it first aired in 1967, watched the first 30 seconds and then turned it off thinking they'd put on the wrong programme.
Perhaps.
And missed their weekly Star Trek. Complained about it.
Yeah, although it is the type of footage that might, especially back then, might keep you glued to the screen.
Well, I suppose anyway, yes, you might say, well, if there's no Star Trek, this looks like it might be good.
Mm-hmm. And from the off, we know this is going to be a different episode, as we see. I assume you can maybe tell me it's stock footage of, I was going to say old school modern fighter planes and ground vehicles.
Yeah, we'll come back to the planes themselves later on.
Will we?
Well, I will.
Good.
Much later on, right at the end. So folk have to stay tuned for the next hour and 2 minutes.
I'm sure they will. And from outside, we head into an office on this airbase where a chap called Webb is viewing his radar screen when he spots a blip.
Yes, out of nowhere.
And so he informs his senior officer.
Yeah, he's immediately quite concerned, and I think they have to scramble a jet to investigate.
I thought he went very quickly from, I'm not sure what this blip is on the screen, to it must be a UFO.
Well, I think it's the fact that he couldn't explain where it had come from, and it was so big and so fast. And they needed to find out what was going on.
Still, I'd be more inclined to assume that it's a technical error before, because I think he said it's a real UFO, meaning like an alien spacecraft.
You're overlooking the fact that these guys probably know all about the UFOs and the Area 51 and so on. They've probably got the inside knowledge, being part of the US Air Force.
That's a point. So as you said, I think, or did you say they scramble a few jets to be sent up to investigate? So in the sky, we get footage of these planes are taking off before we see the Enterprise floating about in the clouds. I like this shot.
That's a great shot. I think it's a remastered version. I think the original was more bobbing on strings, but same idea.
Credits.
As always.
And then the captain is logged 3113.2 2, and it starts over footage of the Enterprise in the clouds.
Yes, and it's got a lot of work to do, this captain's log, because we don't really know from the Enterprise's point of view what's happened at all.
So for the audience benefit, to tell us.
Okay, so they were headed to Starbase 9 to stock up on something when a black hole grabbed them, and they were forced to use maximum warp to break free from its pull, and that sent them spinning out of control, and now they don't know where they are.
Worrying.
Yeah, I would imagine. Yeah, they'd want to quickly get their bearings.
On the bridge, they are in a state of shock with only minimal power, and Uhura is lying dazed on the floor.
Yeah, they're redistributing themselves, having been chucked around a little bit. Spock reports that he's heard from Scotty, and he expects... he hasn't heard from Scotty. He expects Scotty, if he's still with them, to have auxiliary power up and running shortly.
Kirk then puts out a ship-wide communication asking for damage updates from all departments, and they have to tie into the computer's recording facility.
Yeah, and he asks Uhura to make contact with Starfleet to warn them about this black hole.
Yeah, very sensible. We don't want any other ships getting involved in the same...
In the Event Horizon, no. Spock very quickly gathers these reports and says that there's only minor injuries, and they're in orbit of Earth.
Yeah, but currently they have no warp facilities.
Impulse only.
So what does Kirk do?
Well, first of all, I think Spock says this was the direction they were headed anyway, so they've just obviously been thrown further forward, and he also confirms that they have the power to move to a higher orbit, which Kirk orders.
At this point, I think Sulu tells them that the system is a bit sluggish, just as Uhura informs him that she can't get through to Starfleet.
Well, I found this quite interesting. She reports static on the Starfleet channel. Are they using analog signals in the 23rd century to contact Starfleet?
Of course they are.
Well, I suppose there might be reasons for that. I mean, there could be very good reasons that they're more reliable, or they're...
Digital wouldn't work as well.
Yeah, of course not.
But there's another signal coming through.
There is. It's a transmission on a different channel.
Yeah, so she's told to play the audio, and I think they're shocked by what they discover.
This is the 5:30 news summary. Cape Kennedy. The first manned moonshot is scheduled for Wednesday, 6 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. All 3 astronauts who are to make this historic...
Man, moonshot. That was in the late 1960s.
Apparently, Captain. So are we.
What?
Whiplash propelled us into a time warp, Captain. Backward. Exact chronometer readings in a few moments.
Captain, I'm getting ground-to-air transmission.
Verified. Scanners report some type of craft approaching from below us, under cloud cover and closing.
A couple of points that I could say for trivia, but they probably fit in better here. You need to remember this was filmed before the first manned moon mission.
Yes.
So this, I think, is the first, or one of the first times that it was predicted to happen in the 60s. Most other contemporary sources were imagining it would happen in the 70s, or the very early 70s, despite what Kennedy had asked them to achieve. And also correctly nailed it as a Wednesday.
Really?
Yeah. Didn't get the exact time, but yeah, it did happen on a Wednesday.
Either very lucky or a decent amount of research.
Very prescient.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is all written, filmed and done a couple of years before they even went to the moon.
We're inside a fighter jet now.
Yeah, we see the pilot checking his screens and looking for this UFO.
Kirk wants to move faster and Sulu tries, but the ship is... It's a bit slow at the moment. It's still a bit sluggish.
Well,
it's not had its ready break.
From their point of view, but I think on board the plane, the pilot notes it's moving very quickly.
All relative.
Yeah, accelerating away from him, although there's 2 more jets coming.
Although I think the pilot says he's now close enough for visual contact.
Yeah, he reports that it's huge, and I think he gives a description of the shape.
The jets that have been scrambled are 2 minutes away.
They are, and we, up on the bridge, hear the Enterprise listening into this conversation between the pilot and his base.
Yeah, hear the plan, I think it's to try and force them to land. Good luck with that.
Or at least keep them in the area, yes. And Spock's concerned that it might have nuclear weapons on board.
Yes, which could severely damage them, considering their lack of power and defences, I suppose, at the moment.
Well, we saw this before with the Romulans using the old school nuclear weapon in Balance of Terror. Mm-hmm. It did cause some damage.
Yeah, or a sword, that could cause some damage.
Well, if you poke it in the right spot.
Yeah. So Kirk makes a decision and tells Scotty to set the tractor beam on the jet and hold it, even though Spock warns that the jet may be too fragile to take this. So yeah, Kirk's taking a bit of a chance here at this.
Well, Spock's a bit late with his warning because they've already given the order, and by the time Kirk processes Spock's warning, the jet is being destroyed by the tractor beam. He doesn't have a chance to change his decision.
Yeah, so because of this, Kirk calls for the pilot to be beamed up to safety.
Yeah, they need to keep him alive at least.
So down in the transporter room, this pilot is understandably confused by finding himself on board the ship.
I think not just that, the fact that he's gone from sitting down to standing up without actually moving his muscles.
Yeah, how would you react in that situation?
That'd be a little bit weird, wouldn't it? You'd feel a bit odd. Like your body had been manipulated.
And he's even more confused when he's addressed in English.
Well, yes, because he thinks this is some kind of alien ship, or at least Russian, maybe.
Yeah. I don't think I've asked you this before, or I don't think we have addressed it. I'm sure you can tell me. I assume that Spock doesn't speak English as his first language.
Okay, I think Spock does speak English. I think he'll have learned English, but there are universal translators which come into play.
Yeah, what is it? Is it Vulcanian? What is it they speak?
Vulcan.
Yeah, okay. Vulcan.
The Vulcan language, I think it's referred
so
to.
That's what I'm saying. So Spock, English isn't you don't speak English on Vulcan.
No, that would be bizarre.
It would be.
And I imagine they probably don't speak only one language on Vulcan. We don't speak only one language on our planet.
That's true.
But there'll be one main language, I imagine, by this point in the future. But Vulcan's not one. You hear people speaking Klingon a lot more because they developed the Klingon language out a bit more. The Vulcan language, it's really just snippets here and there that you hear for effect rather than a fully fleshed out invented language.
Okay. So this pilot, he does, however, snap back to military poise when he reels off his name and his rank.
Yeah, that's him. He's restricting his responses at this stage, yeah.
Who is he?
Captain John Christopher.
Of the US Air Force. Serial number?
I didn't know that down.
4857932.
Okay.
Carling, sir. That's from Scum. Sorry.
Right. Thought you were going to Dad's Army for a second there.
Oh no.
Don't give him your name, Pike.
Kirk, during this episode, it's almost patronising. He seems amused at this point and throughout the episode.
Yeah, I think he is very much amused by these sort of primitive humans with their primitive emotions. But he doesn't. At other times, he acts serious. It is a little bit of a contradiction going on.
And he's got a bit of a cheek on him because the amount of times we've seen him in positions where he is the vulnerable party and he doesn't have the power or the intellect of his...
I suppose maybe it's an instinct that he's fighting against. He maybe knows that he shouldn't be feeling this way. But he instinctively does sort of look down a little bit on this sort of historic... Like maybe you or I would if we met someone from Shakespearean times. We know that Shakespeare's a genius, but he also lives in like a hut.
A hut? Really?
I don't know.
Doesn't he?
These sort of
live in a
things,
hut.
You might well have your prejudices. He was 5'1". You literally look down on the guy.
Okay. To give him the benefit of the doubt, perhaps he's smiling to try and relax and put him at ease. He's not an enemy, he's a friend.
It does seem more of a smirk than a smile, though.
It does, yeah. In any case, he introduces himself and apologises for the abrupt nature of the transportation, but doesn't immediately answer his guests' questions about what's happening, and I think he's quite sharp about it.
I think he's a bit hesitant to give too much information. I think he's still kind of playing it by ear a little bit here.
Sure.
But he doesn't know what he can tell this guy. He doesn't know what they're going to do with this guy. Are they sending him back? How much can he know? He's obviously very aware that he's brought this guy into a spaceship from 300 years in the future.
He's maybe thinking to himself, we might have to kill him here.
No, that's Spock's plan. Okay. If he's a rifle out as he comes down.
Talking of Spock, he then communicates through telling him that the jet has been destroyed, and Kirk instructs the understandably curious Christopher to follow him up to the bridge.
Yeah, it's an interesting reaction from both Kirk and Christopher. You'd think Christopher would be more shocked that they've just blown up his ship or his plane, and be therefore a bit more defensive.
Well, perhaps we are judging it on how we would react, but remember, he's been trained.
I suppose, yeah, adapt to the circumstances.
Yeah.
But you don't think the guys that just kidnapped you and blew up your plane, you would maybe think maybe they're not on my side?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. In the corridor, he relaxes a bit, especially when a female crewman walks by.
I'm not sure that's relaxation. I think he's genuinely shocked to see an active serving woman.
You think because the score, the music at that point was a bit sort of sassy.
That's just the usual sort of Star Trek, oh, there's a woman with her arse hanging out of her short skirt music.
Yeah.
We always get that quite... I'm not sure I don't like the music, but I think it is a little bit sort of stylised, and it's meant to be...
It's the 60s, remember?
Yeah, it's very 60s, isn't it? To have this sort of this female motif.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But I think Christopher is more surprised to see that there's a woman just treated as a normal part of the crew and not as, oh, look, this is the woman of the crew. Or even not included at all.
Sure. In the turbo lift, Kirk tries to explain the United Earth structure they operate, but simply abandons that and tells him he's from the future and arrived via a time warp.
Yeah, I think Christopher's both sceptical but also a bit pragmatic on the basis that he's clearly on a spaceship. Or at least he was brought from his plane to this other place somehow.
I think you mentioned the United Earth structure before, but if you haven't, remind me.
This is only the second time it gets mentioned, and I don't think it's mentioned again until Star Trek Enterprise. So there was one theory that the writer of this episode put out, that Kirk was maybe just trying to bluff this guy off with this sort of fake organisation.
Really?
But then I think it gets canonised later on by Star Trek Enterprise.
Okay.
It's just an agency. It's not the main agency. It's part of their structure.
Okay. Christopher doesn't accept, however, that he is where he is, and he doesn't believe in little green men.
No, and Spock agrees.
Yeah, he's not a little green man.
And that's the story. Obviously, this is him meeting his first alien. And I find this unusual because Spock in this show quite often is made out to be so alien. Well, he just looks like a human with pointy ears.
That's it. You don't look at him immediately and go, that is an alien creature.
Yeah.
You think that's a guy with weird ears.
Yeah.
Are they fake ears? Is it...
What's going on here? Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think maybe there's an implication that there is something very alien about it. Maybe he smells differently, or he carries an air of difference about him. I don't know. Maybe there's something obvious.
Possibly. Yeah.
I don't think we're meant to be in any doubt that he believes he's seen an alien.
No.
Christopher accepts that Spock is not human instantly.
On the bridge.
There's a problem, yes. They can't return Christopher to Earth. He knows too much. Although they are back in orbit, so it's not all bad news.
That's true. I think, does Kirk invite him to look around, but don't touch anything?
Basically, he's like a child. So yes, come to Dad's work, but don't touch anything. These are very important, and that can cut your finger off.
And the bit about not coming back to Earth because he knows too much, that was a bit of Biff Tannen, wasn't it?
Just a little. If ever a young man comes up and asks you about this book.
Well, see, I thought of Biff Tannen with the book. He knows too much, but I'm not sure from what he's learned already how in any way if they dropped him back down.
Yeah, what's he going to do? Oh, there's going to be spaceships in 300 years.
But no one's going to believe you. You put him back down and say, I was on it. I mean, there are whack jobs already who say that. I was brought up to a spaceship and probed.
Yeah.
So it doesn't. He can't prove anything or demonstrate that this actually exists, and he's not found anything that he can use to...
Yeah, what knowledge is he going to have that he can share? Yeah.
Anyway, great Scott.
I think he gets sent off to the quartermaster for a change of clothes, and then he's to come up to Kirk's quarters once he's sorted out.
Also, I like the fact that Kirk is disappointed, but agrees with Spock's annoying logic.
Well, that happens quite often, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I think, though, when he agrees with it, he says, I'll agree with it. It's almost a temporary state. I'll agree with your logic until I come up with a better idea.
Yeah. and the scene ended with Spock playing with his ears, which I thought was quite nice.
Just a reminder.
Well, I think, I'm not sure if he's more conscious about it.
Of his difference when he sees someone who doesn't, someone who reacts, yeah.
So where are we?
We get to Kirk's quarters, where he is, as we heard at the top of the show, having issues with the computer system.
Yeah, a sultry little devil.
Apparently it's been given a new personality by the women of Signet 14, a female-dominated society who felt it needed more femininity.
I like that.
Yeah, I like the fact that Spock is finding it hilarious as well, and finding it very hard to contain that.
I think Kirk's quite embarrassed.
Yes, Spock notes at this point it's going to take 3 weeks at Starbase out of service to repair the computer.
Now, when I heard about this Signet 14, my immediate assumption was that there must be a future episode where we go to a female-only planet or female-dominated planet, surely.
Yes, but not Signet 14.
Ah, okay.
I think it's actually a theme that Roddenberry returns to a couple of times, this sort of I don't know whether the female call it the matriarchy, a matriarchal society.
Sure.
Yeah.
Captain Christopher, he's smirking as he's watching this.
First world problems is what he's thinking.
Yeah. But it is soon ended when Kirk tells him plainly of his plans and the problem they have with him.
We can't send you back.
Can't? Well, Spock here told me that your transporter can beam down an object even from an orbit this high.
It's not the transporter, it's you. You know what the future looks like. If anybody else finds out, they could change the course of it, destroy it.
Well, then my disappearance would change something, too.
I have run a computer check on all historical tapes. They show no record of any relevant contribution by John Christopher.
Look, Captain, I don't buy all of your time accident story. Now, the experts can figure out who you are, what you are. It's my duty to report what I've seen. Well, what would you do?
I'd report. If I could. We can't take the risk.
I don't want to know about risks. I have a wife, 2 children. What about them?
I'm sorry.
Engine room to Captain Kirk.
I have to say that I'm with Christopher on this one. I mean, he was just doing his job. He get beamed up and now told that he won't be able to see his wife or kids again. It's unacceptable.
Yeah. It's quite aggressive, isn't it?
And also the fact that I don't buy this. He's seen the future. He's not seen the future at all. He's seen the inside of like a control room. He's probably seen that, back down in the
I've
headquarters.
seen the future.
Have you?
I went to Epcot at Disneyland in Florida about 8 years ago. I saw in the World of Tomorrow. Things like talking toasters and stuff.
Real wow.
Yeah. You probably got toasters you can operate from your phone now.
You do.
Just select the colour of brown you want.
Mm-hmm. So I don't think he's seen the future at all.
No.
I'd be really... I've not seen anything. What are you talking about the future? I've seen a guy with big ears, that's it.
Yeah, I think he gets very defensive, which is understandable. Maybe isn't the best approach, I think.
He's scared.
If he was more alert, he might notice that Kirk's not convinced about this. And he might have taken a different approach to persuade him, or at least work on him. But he doesn't.
He doesn't know. Down in engineering, it turns out that it's not only Christopher who is trapped, as Scotty delivers a progress report and points out the reality that the Enterprise finds itself in. Yeah,
the engines will be fixed in 4 hours, but they've got nowhere to go.
Yeah.
Basically.
That's it.
Yeah.
We then get a captain's log, 31:13.7. It's just a recap.
Yep, there's an issue with the engines getting fixed, and they've got this guy on board and they don't know what to do with him.
So back to Kirk's quarters we go, where his log is confirmed by the same husky tone as before, causing him to add an additional note.
Yeah, get the computers fixed.
Yeah, or it'll be scrapped.
Spock has some news, but before he can discuss it with Kirk, they need to get Captain Christopher. Unfortunately,
he's not where he should be.
He's AWOL.
Doing a little runner, isn't he?
Yeah, I think Kirk has a fair idea where he might be headed.
Yeah, but he puts out an all decks alert for him anyway and heads to the transporter room. How do you think that would work? Can you imagine if that was you? You wouldn't know how to operate a transporter. I'm going to run down there.
He doesn't intend to operate the transporter. We'll see in a second.
That's true.
Knowing that red shirts are vulnerable, he takes one out.
He does.
Christopher, that is, we should say. And
takes his phaser before entering the transporter room and demanding to be sent back down to Earth.
Yeah, if you're the transporter chief, you're thinking, well, I'm just going to put up a force field down. You're going to be stuck on the transporter pad.
But yeah, you've no idea what this guy can do.
I'm going to just beam your phaser away.
Yeah.
Unlucky.
Or I'll just transport you from here to the toilets.
Yeah, and the prison. Yeah.
However, Kirk turns up and, easily knocks him out.
Yeah, he's got the training.
Yeah. He puts him in sickbay.
Well, yeah, some time passes and McCoy, who in this episode has engaged full paranoia mode at every appearance and really annoyed me.
Why?
Because he's not being rational. He's done this so many times. He does it to Kirk, he does it to Spock. It's like he wants to know the future and they can't tell him what's going to happen in the future, so he's really upset about it.
Fair enough. So
he's asking Kirk, what's going to happen if we can't get back? It's an impossible question. and it's unreasonable of him to be angry at Kirk for not having an answer for him. What Kirk should say is, that's what we're working on, you do your job. If we need your help, we will actually ask you, as we've done many times in the past, as you know we will do, because we're quite competent at this job, and we're your friends. And you should have more faith in us. Sorry, I was a wee bit of a
rant there.
Yeah,
Enjoy
just
that?
a little bit.
Good, yeah, that's good.
Because McCoy's such a good character, and when they make him act like this, it's annoying.
Kirk says, I think that they can't go back to Earth, as it would be 430 times worse.
It's McCoy that says this. He says they can't all go down to Earth with Christopher because it would be 430 possibilities of breaking the future.
That's true. So Kirk talks through the quandary that while he and Christopher are the same age, he would be useless. I mean, I don't like this. He'd be useless in their society. Why? Why would he be useless?
He'd be a man at a time. It would be really difficult for him. He'd probably end up killing himself.
Quite the leap. He would be useless.
No, well, this is what they're saying. Could he be retrained? Well, I think what they're saying is...
Yeomen just hand over coffee and things like that.
I think what they're saying, though, is the training that he's had is not applicable to the service in the future. So he would need to be essentially re-educated in what's possible, how he would fit. A bit like Captain America coming out of the ice. Yeah, I'm sure he could. Well, that's what they're discussing here. Could he be retrained? And they're like, but could he be retrained to forget his family? And obviously, it's a rhetorical question, but I think Christopher wakes up at this point and says, no, I couldn't be trained to forget my family.
Quite right, yeah.
Anyhow,
also, Kirk, I think, says to McCoy that he's starting to sound like Spock.
At which point Spock shows up.
Yeah.
And McCoy's very offended. But Christopher comments on Kirk's physical training, saying obviously you guys get trained as well. And Spock says they're crude methods.
Which agitates Christopher, who's obviously unsure about him and what he can do.
Yeah, McCoy tries to placate him by saying that Spock's just kidding. He's not about to kill you, don't worry. He's not even got his phaser rifle. Spock, though, is about to surprise McCoy.
Yes, he is. How?
He pulls his phaser rifle out from behind his back. No, he admits that he's made an error.
Much to the delight of McCoy.
Yeah, you can see he's absolutely buzzing.
He's been waiting for this. Go on, he says, go on. Tell me, how bad was it? Are we all going to die?
19 episodes I've been waiting for this. 19 episodes.
What's the mistake he's made?
Christopher is essentially has to go back to Earth.
Why?
He's going to have a son, not yet born, who will grow up to lead the first Earth-Saturn mission.
And that's, I mentioned earlier, a little bit of the Terminator. It's not so much him, it's not the sort of Sarah Connor.
It's his seed.
Yes. Who's going to have a big impact on
They could just extract his seed and implant it in the mother.
Who's going to do that?
Spock.
With the old nerve pinch?
His Vulcan turkey baster. But another point worth mentioning along the lines of what I said before, although the first Earth-Saturn mission, there's never been a manned, and there would be no point in a manned Earth-Saturn mission, the first Earth-Saturn mission did go, or was launched, around about the date that a son of Christopher that was born at this time would have been the right age to lead the mission.
Well, there you go.
So they got the date for the mission right, they just got the nature of the mission wrong.
In any case, that decides it for Kirk. Can we see that the expectant father is rather delighted with the news?
Oh, here comes the patriarchy again. Oh, boy! You're these stupid daughters I've had to waste all these years on. A boy! My son, he can be king! Anyway, down to the briefing room sometime later. You've got Spock, you've got Kirk, and apparently Christopher is now part of this discussion, going over their plan. Yeah,
the decision has been made to send Christopher back, and I think they discuss the practical challenges they face, which include explaining how he survived the destruction of his plane and the fact that he sent back pictures and a radio transmission of the Enterprise.
Yeah, they don't answer the first question, but the second part, they decide they don't have to destroy these records.
Yeah, we'll get on to that. This is
well, yes.
Kirk tries to look in at the bright side and suggests that historically, sightings of UFOs have been explained away as weather balloons. So I think they do answer the first part of that question.
They don't explain how he's going to have survived his plane.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
But Spock points out that they can't have that excuse because this UFO killed a plane and folk noticed. And also, the crash site has folk crawling all over it.
Yeah. So Kirk moves on to their own predicament, and fortunately, Spock has a more positive response.
Yeah, we remember that they solved time travel back in a previous episode, I think, The Naked Time.
Yep.
So Spock's remembered that, and he says, yeah, we can just reverse the calculations, put the numbers in upside down, and we will go back to our own time.
Yeah, effectively a reverse slingshot action.
Well, it's not a reverse, it's a slingshot. It's just going the other way.
Yeah, you're reversing
A
the...
reverse slingshot is still a slingshot.
Yeah, but... no, okay.
If I fire my catapult from the other side of the catapult, ooh.
Don't get technical.
You're the one that gets one out of superfluous words. They're going to pre-slingshot.
I hate the use of pre when it's not required. That's one of my pet hates.
Yes.
Pre-warn, right? Okay, I'll give you that. Pre-warn. What does that mean? You can't... A warning by definition is
In advance.
in advance. So replace the word pre-warn with warn. It still means the same thing.
Yes.
If it wasn't pre, it wouldn't be a warning. It'd be post-warning or whatever. Don't use the word pre when you don't need to.
The prefix pre.
Yeah.
It'd just be a fix.
Anyway.
Anyhow, yes. They do need to retrieve these records, though, so there's no evidence that backs Christopher's story up. So even though he reports it, he'll just look like an idiot. And Christopher's not completely convinced that this is a great plan.
No, it sounds a bit dodgy, to be fair.
Well, no, it's going to make him look like either a liar or a moron. And he's not enamoured with that suggestion, but he doesn't have a say.
No, and Spock disagrees and thinks he will simply be one of the many who thinks he saw a UFO. But I mean, that's the moron part, isn't it?
Yeah, that's it, yeah.
Anyone who thinks he saw a UFO...
Yeah, if he goes down there insisting that he saw this massive spaceship, they're just going to laugh at him.
But this seems enough for Christopher, who admits that he knows the Air Force base and would like to help, but Kirk won't hear of it in case he gets hurt and risks his son's future. That's a bit unlikely.
No, Kirk just doesn't want him down there because he might run off.
So he settles for drawing a map of the place, highlighting the photo lab and the records section.
Yeah, and we skip ahead. I don't know that far, but the mission's underway. It's night time, and there's a guard patrolling this airbase.
Yes, he passes in the corridor seconds before Sulu and Kirk beam down. So I have asked this before. You have to be... I mean, how much do they know about...
They didn't know. That's just luck, I think.
Is it?
They missed him, yeah.
Very chancy.
Yeah.
I mean, they could have beamed down right on top of this guy.
They could have.
And what are you going to do?
Well, I think it's assumed, I don't know if it's ever stated, it must be at some point, that the transporters avoid beaming you into the middle of walls or around people when they've got enough sensor data. Mm-hmm. Because sometimes they mention, you could... In fact, I think previously they did mention you could be beamed into solid rock because they didn't have enough data for one of the transports. So where they've got sensors operating, I think they can avoid people and walls and floors and stuff and beam you into a safe spot.
In any case, they seem intrigued by some of the old-fashioned items that they pass before they arrive at the record room and use some future technology to open the locked door.
Going back to that point, I always think they should beam them an inch off the ground. They should just fall slightly when they arrive, just for safety.
Yeah.
It would also be hilarious.
Not an inch.
They just keep falling.
Maybe...
3 inches?
No, 3 foot.
3 feet off the... But then you're worried about the roof at that point.
Yeah.
Because the walls aren't always that high. If you just beam them in 6 inches off the ground, we always see them just come and land.
If you were the transporter operator, you're messing about, and it's like, I've told you, listen, Sonny, the last time, are you sure?
And yeah, Kirk maybe just always falls over slightly. Yeah. Maybe we've thought about this too much.
Okay, let's move on. We're in the records room.
Somehow they got in there with some kind of Doctor Who type manoeuvre. They unlocked the door with light tricks.
Mm-hmm. And they come across a primitive computer bank. I like this because obviously the joke is at the time that it's modern technology and these guys from the future are laughing at this technology, which apparently
museums, yeah,
which is an ancient piece of museum technology.
It's already ancient.
But as we're watching it now, going, yeah, you're right, it is a piece of garbage.
Sulu says he's seen one in the museum as well, and if they turn it on, it'll be very noisy.
And for some reason, they assume that this definitely must hold the data that they need.
I don't know if there was a date written on the reels or something, but they seem to know what they're looking for, because is this the point where Kirk says to set it to the time that matches the chronometer?
I mean, how would they know how to operate? This is technology from like, what is it, 300 years ago?
Well, yeah, there's this assumption that if you know a modern computer, you also therefore know all preceding computers.
Yeah.
So we see this in other episodes and in movies and whatever, that, Scotty will show up, he can work anything with an engine as long as it's not in the future from where he was.
And I also don't accept the fact that, okay, so he's beamed this, or he's sent this information back down to his base, that they would have already developed the photographs or looked at this, it's just sitting there for a couple of days. We wouldn't
Well,
bother
photographs take a little bit of time to develop, don't they?
Yeah, okay, but they've just lost their jet. That you've seen a UFO,
Yep.
and it's been destroyed, but you've got photographs. You don't They only take half an hour or so to develop. You put them in the.
I don't know how long it takes.
Well, you can do it immediately. You put them in the solution, don't you? You don't have to.
Okay.
But they're not working on it. As a point.
Yeah.
They're thinking to themselves, we'll leave this overnight and we'll come back. There's no rush. Why would we want to look at
We
this?
only lost one pilot.
Yeah. So I don't get. I would have thought they would have been right on that immediately.
Yeah. Meanwhile,
Back up in the transporter room.
McCoy is already freaking out. They've only been away for 15 minutes. And he's like, oh, where are they? Why are they not back? What's going on?
And he snaps at Spock.
Once again, information that Spock doesn't have. He's mad at him for not having it.
Correct. And I liked how Spock handled this because I think that, McCoy says you should be working on your time warp calculations or something, and he merely raises his eyebrow and confirms that he is.
Yeah, he's thinking about it. Yep. And you're annoying me.
Yeah, you're stupid, you can't multitask. Back down in the records room, as they try and remove a tape reel, they're interrupted by a soldier with a gun who disarms them and then takes Sulu's man bag.
His bum bag.
Yes, his fanny pack.
That's it. They are future proof. That's why they've put them on them in the 60s there.
I actually have one. I bought it recently.
For cycling?
No, not for cycling, just for
fashion.
Not for fashion, no, for practicality. It's a little. I actually had to import it from the States because I couldn't get one over
leather?
here. No, it's a nylon type thing. It's an Air Day Pack. It's called.
Do you wear it with fluorescent Bermuda shorts?
I don't wear it around my. Sorry, no, I don't wear it around my. It's a sling bag
Over your shoulder?
Over the shoulder, so horizontally, and it goes across my
Do you
back.
also have one of those plastic tubes you wear on your neck so you can go swimming with your cash?
No, I used to have one of those as a kid.
Yeah.
When we went on holiday, you used to get that. And I'd use it as a weapon. You'd put like some coins in it, and then you could swing it around like.
Hit your siblings?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But no, I do. I've got a sling bag for. It's good for. It's ideal for the summer. When you're maybe just wearing shorts and a t-shirt, but you're out and about, and you've got to carry like your phone and keys and other bits and bobs.
There you go.
So there you go. Yeah, but I don't wear. It's not as a bum bag.
No. That's what you say.
Yeah, you could, but I don't.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. So we flip back up to the transporter room where McCoy is still freaking out. So Spock's like, "Fine, jeez, we'll open the channel."
Yeah. Back down in the records room, the startled soldier, who clearly has never heard a beeping noise before, is very anxious. And this isn't helped when he finds himself beamed up to the transporter room.
Yeah, well, what he does is he opens this communications device that's beeping and accidentally sets off the emergency signal, which Spock takes as the emergency signal, of course, and initiates a transport. I don't think he beams up all the stuff, though. It's just that one communicator.
He puts the bag down.
Right. Okay, so he's beamed up with just the communicator and his gun.
Well, that's the thing. We'll get to that in a second. They're making a complete shambles of this, aren't they? They're now beaming up people left, right, and centre. They're trying.
Another mistake.
Yeah, no one can know about this. This is it. With one person here.
Whatever you do, don't beam up anyone from the 60s.
Another one. What are you doing? Oh no!
I've got a ship full of hippies suddenly appear. That's actually an episode from season 3. We'll come back to that. Oh, you think I'm joking?
Okay. So we're up in the transporter room, and all concerned are now puzzled about what's going on. Although Spock does seem amused but unconcerned that they could all have been shot dead with this gun. So the chap, I had to sort of rewatch this. I thought that he must have been frozen, but he's not.
He's just rigid with fear.
Fear.
Well, which you would be if you were teleported.
No, you wouldn't.
If you just got teleported somewhere, you would be like, "What is going on?"
You wouldn't be frozen stiff. Christopher wasn't.
Well, he's a highly trained pilot.
This guy's a soldier as well.
He doesn't work in extreme circumstances.
Listen, the point is this, Ian. This guy's beamed up, holding and pointing a gun. Why did Spock not realise that he could have been shot dead?
I think Spock immediately recognised that the guy was paralysed with fear.
Oh, there you go.
He's got mind powers. He knows these things.
I don't understand it. He's got a weapon. Just because it's an old-fashioned gun, that bullet could still kill you.
Maybe Spock was freezing him with his mind, and we just didn't see it happen.
No, you'd have to have seen that. If that was the case, it's terrible writing. You have to have a close-up of Spock's eyes and his ears going or whatever it is. And yeah. No, I thought this was a nonsense.
The guy's just obviously
bottled it.
Bottled it, yes. Spock records a wee log after they disarm the man.
A Spock log?
Spock log just says that, yeah, sorry, we're taking a guy on board. That was a mistake. So,
back down in the records room, Kirk communicates up and explains who the new arrival is, but for some reason, the officer is, as we say, frozen in position.
Yeah, which means that there's not really any difficulty with removing his gun and the communicator.
Kirk and Sulu take the remaining tapes and leave
before that, they tell Spock and McCoy to keep the sergeant in the transporter room, which I presume is because there's no budget for any additional sets today and no reason to take him to the bridge, which is the only other room we've already seen.
Yeah, quite possibly. So after they take the tapes, they leave the room and have to sneak and hide as they go towards the photo lab.
Yep. Once inside, they decide to take a look in the dark room, which sets off an alert in the guards' sort of base.
This is, again, it's just a shambles. They're dreadful at this.
Yeah, there's no comprehension of what's going on.
Beaming people up, sending people down, people are getting frozen, they're setting off alarms. This is like 300 years ago. You'd be thinking, they've got a cheek to be smirking at these people. They're rubbish at this.
Yeah.
I don't know what they're doing.
Leaving Sulu in the dark room, Kirk goes back out to check if there's any paper records and is set upon by security.
Is it paper records or film?
I think he's looking for paper records in the photo lab.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe he's looking for printouts or printed photos. Certainly he's looking for something that's not developing right now.
Apparently, I think he finds it like sort of first time, that trope of, oh yes, it's in a nice folder, it says.
It's got the file name on it, yeah. ufo.org.gif. Yeah.
Unread. Do tomorrow.
And yeah, this security team comes in, so Kirk attacks them to make enough noise to alert Sulu.
The most ludicrous fight I've ever seen. It's almost like something out of a musical, like what's it, the Guys and Dolls or something. They're leaping and jumping and doing leapfrogs in each other. And
it's entirely understandable if you think back to Charlie X and the falling training that Kirk was giving Charlie. Yeah. This is what he's doing. He's stylistically falling to take their power and transmit it back up on them.
But there's one point he jumps up and hangs onto the door.
For no reason, and they run underneath him.
Yeah.
you need more comical music in this. In fact, you probably could reset this scene to comedy music and it would be hilarious. And someone probably has already done that. I've not seen it.
No doubt. This, however, gives Sulu time to beam himself out of there, or get beamed out of there.
We assume.
After this fight, they get hold of Kirk and they want to know where the other one is.
Yeah, and he quite logically points out that if there was another one, he'd still be there.
Yeah, can't get past their eagle eyes.
Yeah.
They go, yeah, you got a point there. We're brilliant at this. Yeah, we're the best of the best.
Colonel Fellini, I think, is the fellow who's asking the questions, and he has to accept that, yeah, you're quite right. There's obviously not another guy.
No, who could defeat us? Who could get by us?
Exactly. Teleporting and stuff.
Up in the Enterprise, Spock tells Sulu that he made the right decision in deserting his captain before he gets a communication from Scotty telling him that the warp engines have been fixed.
Yep, so Spock says, fire them up.
Yeah, as they will be needed to test his theory as he inspects the film.
What's a wee in-joke here?
Yeah, he smears the apparent poor photography.
Yes, Leonard Nimoy being an amateur photographer.
So I believe.
I think after Star Trek he went to university to do a photography course at maybe UCLA.
Okay, that would be interesting if you're just a normal student and suddenly
Spock shows up. Yeah. Aren't you Dr. Barry Mayfield? That's another reference that only the elite will get.
Plenty of them. However, McCoy is not interested in pictures or his theory. He wants to know what they're going to do about Kirk.
Yet again, up to Haido. Oh, you haven't saved Kirk yet. It's like, he's been here for 30 seconds. Kirk's not in any particular danger, we don't think.
Well, he's trapped down there. He doesn't have his communicator, therefore they won't be able to beam him back up. So
well, not immediately, but hey.
Yeah.
It reminded me a little bit of what's the one when he's Dagger of the Mind.
Yeah.
When Kirk and the science lady with the psychology degree are down on the planet and Spock has to go and mount a rescue. Dr. Knoll. Sorry, I should remember her name.
The charming Dr. Knoll.
From the Christmas party.
Yeah. Spock does accept that they have a problem and calls for Christopher to come through to the briefing room.
Yeah, apparently he now knows the layout of the Enterprise and he's got freedom of movement. Yeah.
Chrissy boy!
He's out there somewhere.
He's like, I'll be there in 10 minutes, I'm eating. I'm in the bowling alley. The pins get knocked down.
I'm watching some Shakespeare.
Back down on the airbase, Kirk is being interrogated by The Colonel, did you say what? Colonel
Fellini.
Fellini, okay.
I think he used to play for Manchester United.
He's a very well-known director.
Right.
Who wants to know how he got in and what he's doing there.
I popped in out of thin air.
You seem to think this is some kind of a game.
No, Colonel, I know it's no game.
All right, what did you say your name was?
For the 4th time, my name is James T. Kirk.
And how did you get inside a top security installation, James T. Kirk?
I told you you wouldn't believe me. Colonel, would you mind being careful with that?
Oh, that worries you a little bit, huh? What is that, a radio? Transmitter of some kind?
Of some kind.
You can be more specific than that, Kirk. I don't like mysteries.
You don't stop being careless with that, and you'll have one. A big one.
I'll have it disassembled and examined. We are not dummies, mister. We know how to find out things we want to know. What is that? Is that a uniform of some kind?
This little thing, something I slipped on.
Kirk, maybe you don't realize how serious this is. Sabotage of a government installation.
Did I sabotage something?
No, we stopped you in time. But what would you have done if we hadn't found you?
Believe me, Colonel, nothing at all.
Is that what you're here for? Nothing at all?
That's what would have happened if you hadn't interfered.
All right, Kirk, maybe this will make you laugh. Sabotage, espionage, unauthorized entry, burglary. How are those for starters? And I can think up lots more if you don't start talking.
All right, Colonel. The truth is, I'm a little green man from Alpha Centauri, a beautiful place. You ought to see it.
I am going to lock you up for 200 years.
I think Kirk knows that's about right, but I think he's maybe 100 years out there. I mean, obviously, all the top Air Force folk are away in Vietnam, and this is just the guy who's been left. It's very much Dad's Army. These guys who are completely incompetent are left to bumble around the bases on their own while all the leading officers are out fighting against the Viet Cong.
But still, Kirk is overly confident and relaxed about his situation.
Yeah, he doesn't rate this guy at all. I think he knows that he'd be able to disarm him or get away from him.
But it's not the point. It's he's down here, he's trapped. He's not, getting back up.
He's maybe not quite thought through how we're going to deal with the whole history-changing thing here.
Yeah. Up in the briefing room on the Enterprise, Christopher explains the probable protocol that's taking place in holding Kirk on the base and agrees to give the coordinates of the room that he's been held in.
Yeah, but only if he gets to go. Now, obviously, if he really wanted to, Spock could mind meld with this guy and take the information. We've seen him do this sort of thing in the past.
Yeah, it takes a lot out of him. He can't be bothered.
Well, not only that, I think he's got an easier way of dealing with things.
Yeah, so Spock reluctantly agrees that he can join himself and Sulu, although he will be carrying phasers set to heavy stun force.
Oh, I think we already saw in the last episode there only were 2 settings.
Heavy.
This stun and kill.
At this, Christopher smiles and claims Spock doesn't trust him. But this is a weird response. He says he does to a certain point. If it's only to a certain point, then you don't trust him.
Yeah, well, I think he trusts them to give the right information. He doesn't think they're getting beamed down into a trap, but he doesn't trust them not to try and escape while they're down there.
Sure.
We get a weird scene now in the transporter. In fact, I would say an unnecessary scene in the transporter room.
Yeah.
So this lot beamed down and the camera pans across to where the Air Force sergeant that beamed up earlier is still standing there because he's been told not to leave the room. And then he has a discussion with the transporter chief, who isn't named in this episode, but we'll get to that because he's going to become a recurring character. And asks, what do you want? Do you want something to eat? Yeah, what do you want? You can have anything. Chicken soup. I mean, this is a man of no imagination.
No.
But he is shocked, even at that limited ambition, to see soup produced. I mean, you could do that now. You could produce a packet of soup in a kettle. You could produce soup out of a drawer or a vending machine. Yeah,
but he sees the card's been put into this machine and it immediately appears. So here's the thing. So this isn't proper food. This is
reconstituted.
Yeah, so why was McCoy bemoaning the synth food in an earlier episode?
This is synth food. This is
Yeah,
what
but the
McCoy's
guy
on.
says it's like the real. He tastes it and goes, "Yeah, this is the real deal."
He's obviously not sophisticated in these. Well, how different is it from tin soup? Tin soup's not real food either, is it?
Well,
So it's not like he's not cooking a chicken and turning it into a soup
no, but I do
with
like
fresh vegetables. It's a bit different from
It is, but
Heinz soup.
Yeah, to be fair, I've got to say I do like a Heinz cream of chicken as a tasty.
Yeah, but I'm sure the reconstituted food's as good as that. It's just not as good as fresh food made with, hand-grown vegetable.
I think I prefer the taste. My wife's cooking. I prefer the taste of Heinz soup.
Oh, no, hang on. You get yourself into trouble here.
My mother-in-law.
I have to say that there are some good tin soup. I like a Campbell's celery tin soup. It's good.
Oh, yeah, right, listen, let's go on.
Can we not discuss our favourite tin foods? Is that what we're doing here?
I like Heinz ravioli and a tin
No,
on toast.
no, Heinz, no.
Heinz
Spaghetti hoops.
Spaghetti hoops.
No.
Alphabet spaghetti. I quite like that as well. Oxtail. I really like an oxtail soup.
I'm not a fan.
Yeah, I like it.
That's good.
Vegetable soup's good. Heinz
I
vegetable
think
soup.
everyone's turned off.
They have.
They've pressed the skip forward. They're hoping this takes less than 45 seconds to deal with.
Back down on the airbase, the three appear from the shadows and knock out a guard with a karate chop.
Hiya! Well, it's so obviously like Hollywood karate rubbish.
I'll leave
It's
it
not
in. I'll leave it in.
proper martial arts.
Before arriving at the interrogation room where Spock uses a nerve pinch and Kirk kicks the gun from the Colonel's hand and then punches him unconscious. He's doing a bit of damage in this episode for again someone who's caused all of this.
Yep. So Spock explains to Kirk why they brought Christopher, because Kirk doesn't understand. And then Spock just goes through to the toilet, I think.
Yeah.
We don't see him again for a while.
No. As they are talking, we see Christopher move one of the unconscious soldiers, and as he does so, he secretes his gun.
That's one word for it.
He takes it anyway.
Yeah, secretly.
And when Kirk orders the four of them to be beamed up, he pulls it out, refusing to go.
Like the gun would stop them transporting him. What do you think is going to happen?
Yeah, that's the point.
They can either...
I suppose he doesn't know how it works. I mean, he's got a gun. He thinks
he thinks they're with a gun, they'll have to do what I say.
Yeah.
He's not thought it through.
No, Kirk tells him that he will go home, but on his terms. This doesn't appeal to Christopher.
Yeah, he's becoming increasingly anxious at Spock's refusal to come back out the toilet.
But he does come back out just now.
Well, he doesn't. He appears from behind him. He's transported out to the corridor.
Oh, is that what he done?
Yeah.
Ah, right,
so he's gone into the toilet, got transported, or office or whatever it is, transported out to the corridor, and appears behind Christopher and nerve pinches him.
Good thinking.
Well, he thinks, or he thought this was likely. I think he had it under control.
He trusted him to a point.
Exactly.
Captain's log 3114.1. Kirk insists that they must make an attempt to break free from their position.
Yep, or else they're all just going to be stuck where they are forever.
In the briefing room, Kirk, Scotty and Christopher listen on as Spock outlines his slingshot plan, but Christopher rightly asks how that will help him and his colleague.
Logically, as we move faster and faster toward the sun, we'll begin to move backward in time. We'll actually go back beyond yesterday, beyond the point when we first appeared in the sky. Then, breaking free will shoot us forward in time, and we'll transport you back at a point before any of this happened.
You won't have anything to remember because it never will have happened.
What if you can't pull free of the sun?
Oh, we'll do that all right, Captain. We'll not be getting so close that my engines couldn't pull us out. What I am worried about, sir, that we may not have much control when we're thrown forward again.
Helm control?
Braking control, sir. If I can't stop us soon enough, we may overshoot our time. And if I stop the engine suddenly, the strain may tear us apart. Any way we do it, it means a mighty rough ride.
Well, gentlemen, we all have to take a chance. Especially if one is all you have. Assume your stations.
Yeah, I think Kirk quite rightly thinks better off dead than stuck here with nothing to do until we run out of supplies and starve.
Yeah, not much of a choice, really.
And these two guys' lives, well, if we can save them, we can save them.
If not.
And if we can't, it's not the end of the world.
On the bridge, they watch on the screen as they leave Earth behind with Warp 3 ordered.
Heading for the sun.
And Christopher actually seems pleased and in awe of what he is witnessing. I think he understands that he is experiencing something here that no other person alive to that point would have.
Except for the guy that's there with him, and he didn't get to see very much because he's locked in the transporter room.
Frozen eating soup.
Yeah. Maybe the soup thawed him out a wee bit. Anyhow, the speed is increasing and increasing, and it goes off the dial, and suddenly they've stopped going backwards in time, and they've started moving forwards again.
They have. Also, we should mention on that point that I noted that it's understandable that he enjoyed the experience, because he mentions that he applied for the space program but failed.
Yeah, and it's the right time for that. He would be probably of ages with someone like a Neil Armstrong or a Buzz Aldrin.
Yep, or Michael Collins.
And again, it mentioned the 3 astronauts, although, talk about that again. That's not so much of a prediction.
We then have a very impressively blinding shot of the Enterprise approaching the sun.
It's a good shot. Again, I think it's new. The whole thing going around the sun wasn't in the original episode.
Yeah.
Or at least the manoeuvre was, but the visual wasn't.
I liked it. I think they're now travelling at warp 8.
Well, like I say, Spock says the time goes off the dial, and that's when they stop moving backwards in time and start to come back forwards again.
Yeah, so Kirk tells Christopher to get his stuff and report to the transporter room, and reminds him with a smile that he's only 15 years to do this.
I don't think he really does, though.
No.
They get a brief shot from the transporter room then of Christopher thanking Kirk for the experience, and in coordination with Spock, the transporter room beams him, and again, I'm not sure how this is done. It seems a little bit weird. Beams him into his own body at the moment that he was beamed out of the jet.
Yeah.
Or slightly before, actually. Maybe a couple of minutes before he was beamed out. So I don't know how that works. And I don't think we really see that happen much in the future. It's very Quantum Leap.
It is, yeah.
And I didn't like it.
And I think
it's a fudge.
It's explained off as another UFO by the...
Well, the Enterprise, yes, it disappears. So once he's back in his original body, presumably now with no memory, although I don't know what memory he does have. If any, it certainly seems he doesn't have any memory of being on the Enterprise from what he does and what he says, because it shoots off. He doesn't see it anymore. He doesn't have any record of it, and it's the end of the story as far as he's concerned. He gets summoned back to base.
Kirk's pleased with how this has turned out, and then decides it's the turn of the other officer, who is sent back to the point just before he discovers them in the record room.
Yeah, so again, he gets beamed into his body, but earlier than he was beamed out.
So there's 2 people, I don't know.
Yeah.
Don't try and...
Basically, they're merged into... I know we saw before with Kirk, the 2 Kirks getting beamed out and beamed back as one. So there must be this technology.
Yeah.
So what I presume they're doing, and I'm maybe retconning a bit here, is beaming out the original one at the same time as they're beaming down the first one, and then merging the 2 transporter beams into one individual.
You think? Yeah. Okay.
But they don't need to.
No.
Because if they're not beaming him out, just leave the original one and kill the one that they've got. In fact, I think that's probably what they do.
This is the type of thing that hurts your head.
Well, effectively what they're doing is killing the one that was on the Enterprise and leaving the guy with only the memory up to that point, which is the guy who was in the jet anyway.
I'll take your word for that. We're on the bridge. It's the final hurdle now.
Yeah.
They have to brake and stop at the right time.
They need to judge it so they come back at their own time and not like way beyond it into the future.
Yeah.
Scotty's concerned, but again, Kirk reiterates that there's no option.
So the brakes are applied, and after a lot of jolting, throwing around, and nearer buckling of engines...
Well, Scotty reports that the engines are buckling, but nobody responds to that, and all Kirk says is that...
That'll be fine.
Scotty's still with us, which again is an echo of the line that Spock gave in the opening scene, and assumes everything's okay. Nobody's told him it's okay. They don't know what time they're in.
Yeah, this is the type of thing that you have to be very precise, and the chances of this going exactly according to plan must be minuscule.
So my question is, do they still remember everything? So if they still remember everything, why does the other guy not remember everything?
Who knows?
This is where I come to the conclusion that they've probably effectively killed the ones that they beamed up and just let the original versions live.
Let's just assume that. Yeah, let's just run with that.
That's the effect of what they've done. Because they've removed those memories, so it's just that other guy. There's no difference.
Murderers.
If we assume that the folk on the Enterprise haven't lost memory, although you could play it either way, it's not really 100% clear here, I don't think.
No, because they finally returned to their own time. And on this occasion, Kirk's delighted to hear the sassy voice of the computer.
Yes, and the Starfleet contact is told that the Enterprise is home. So there is an implication that they do remember, I think, but not maybe 100% confirmation.
Yeah, I'll be honest, the last sort of 5 minutes or so that you were chatting about there, I just turned off and said, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, they fixed it.
It's fixed.
They got back to their time, that's it.
I think I tried to follow it up to one point and I thought, nah, not worth it.
Yeah. It's a Deus Ex Machina sort of finish. So that's a bit of a problem. But the other big problem...
Another problem, okay.
Spock had this slingshot idea way back.
The reverse slingshot.
Why did they bother going down to remove the records if they were going to go back in time and return them before it all happened anyway?
Yeah, I don't know. That's so sort of
They didn't need to do that.
No.
That's a complete waste of time.
Well,
it's just Spock basically stalling them until they got the engines fixed. Just giving them something to do.
But that is always a problem when you're dealing with time, is that in most cases you've got time. That's the thing. You can just go back and...
Yeah, if you can control time travel, then there's never any need for hassle.
Nope.
So it didn't kind of knit together, even despite that I liked the episode very much and enjoyed it.
As did I, yeah.
And I'm happy to forgive any of those inconsistencies and temporal issues. Call it timey-wimey, wibbly-wobbly, whatever you want to call it.
It felt like one of those. It felt like another sort of lightweight episode.
Well, I suppose there's no...
There wasn't any real villains in it. It was just, we've got ourselves a bit of a problem here. And there was no real urgency in that sense.
Stakes. Well, there was the stakes were that they might not get back to their own time and that would be the end of them. Yeah,
there were stakes, but you have to have stakes against a time constraint. Or else, we know that you can just
I suppose, with the Galileo 7, with the ship might not last.
Exactly.
And so on,
So it was fun to see them that different. That was a sort of different situation, different environment, different time. But yeah, it felt lightweight, which is not a criticism.
No, like we both said at the start, it was an episode that we very much enjoyed and up there with probably the top 2 or 3 that we've seen so far.
I would agree with that, yeah. Trivia.
Yes, okay, so it originally aired on the 26th of January 1967, and I would ask you to bear that date in mind until after I've talked about the people involved, because I'm going to test you on it.
Are you?
Just write it down somewhere. So Tomorrow's Yesterday, directed by Michael O'Hurley. That name might ring a bell. We had a red shirt called O'Hurley last week, which is not officially, I can see anyone named after him, but surely it must be.
Yeah. Tell me that he's part of the famous O'Hurley dynasty.
Clan. Yes, okay. His nephew Gavin appeared in the pilot of Star Trek Voyager.
And also Superman 3.
Jonathan Creek, which has a good podcast about it, I'm led to believe.
Yeah, I've heard it's good, yeah.
The Jonathan Creek podcast. Very well regarded.
Apparently. Up there.
Yeah.
Give a listen. Go find it and tell us what you think.
The brother of this director, Michael O'Hurley, is the Oscar-nominated actor Dan O'Hurley.
I know him best for, I've mentioned this before, probably on the Jonathan Creek podcast, Halloween 3. And if anyone has ever watched that, they know the theme tune.
Okay. Getting back to Michael O'Hurley.
And also, it's the best. I don't care if anyone says Halloween 3 is the best Halloween. Not Halloween 1, not the original. Halloween 3 is the best.
I see, it's a bit like you and sci-fi. I would tell anyone who asked that I don't like horror movies, I don't watch horror movies. But there's quite a lot of horror movies that I have watched and enjoyed and are amongst my favourite movies. So I think there's a couple of the Halloween ones are in there. Scream movies, Texas Chainsaw movies, Hills of Eyes movies, others. I think Get Out and Us, the Jordan Peele ones recently, are 2 of my very favourite movies of the last 5 years.
What's your thoughts on Slumber Party Massacre? I've just downloaded it. I'm going to watch it tonight.
I've not seen that, but it sounds like it might be a lot of fun.
I hope it is.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, I interrupted.
Back to where I was. Yeah. So Michael O'Hurley, this is his only Star Trek involvement. So why there was a character named after him, I'm not sure. Maybe just they saw his name on a call sheet and thought, we'll scribble that in. It's quite a good name for a guy. Or maybe they really liked the guy who wrote that. Who knows? I'm only spitballing and it doesn't even matter. He also directed shows like The A-Team, Miami Vice, The Equalizer. I know that's one of your favourites.
Yeah.
Not so much the most recent movie.
The second movie was terrible. I enjoyed the first one, but...
Denzel's good enough. He's very watchable, isn't he?
Yes, he is. But it's one of these ones that... much like there's a new the Mark Wahlberg one, Spencer for Hire. Or Spencer, sorry, it's called Spencer Confidential. Spencer for Hire was a TV series that was based on the books, which I enjoy.
Okay.
But this latest movie, nothing to do with the books themselves.
No correlation.
And the same with The Equalizer. I thought, the Denzel, the movies, they've just really bought the title to maybe attract. I don't know why.
It's the concept of an equalizer, a guy who gets revenge.
It didn't even have a theme tune, which is one of the best things about it. Anyway, carry on.
Okay, back to Michael Hurley. He died in 1997 when he was 69. Wrapping him up. DC Fontana, for an episode with a lot of sidetracks, I've chosen to dig in on someone that I passed on in a previous appearance. She is credited as the writer of this episode, Dorothy Fontana. Although Bob Justman, long-term producer of the show, did have a story idea that's almost beat for beat the same and got no credit or royalties for this one, which is a bit odd. Dorothy Fontana is a name that is synonymous with Star Trek. She'd already written for shows like The Tall Man and Frontier Circus when she became Gene Roddenberry's secretary for a small period of time, where her talent was obviously recognised, and she began writing for Star Trek. She was promoted to story editor at the age of 27, stayed in that role to the end of the second season, and continued to write scripts in the third season. She was also story editor and assistant producer and wrote scripts for the animated series, key part of the originating team for The Next Generation, wrote the opening pilot episode of that show and got a Hugo nomination for it. Also wrote an episode for Deep Space Nine. Outside of Star Trek, wrote for shows like Logan's Run, Dallas, He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, Babylon 5. She recently died in 2019 at the age of 80 and is one of the iconic Star Trek names.
It certainly sounded as if she had a massive impact on the whole of the franchise.
And very close personally to Gene Roddenberry as well.
Sure.
Roger Perry played Captain Christopher. His appearance in Star Trek might be a fait accompli, given that he started his career as a Desilu contract player, having been personally discovered by Lucille Ball. He also appeared in shows like The Facts of Life and Falcon Crest, where he had leading roles, and he died in 2018 at the age of 85.
Falcon.
There's a few folk from this episode that died very recently in the last few years. Ed Peck was Colonel Fellini. He breaks that trend. He died in 1992 at the age of 75. This was his only Star Trek appearance, but he also showed up in shows like I Dream of Jeannie and The Odd Couple, as well as the movie Bullet opposite Steve McQueen.
No relation to Gregory.
No. Or his son, I think, who plays Spock in the most recent series.
Okay.
Ethan Peck.
There you go.
John Winston made the first of 11 appearances as Lieutenant Kyle in this episode. He wasn't named, but he was the transporter chief, and he'll show up more often than he actually shows up in one of the movies as well. He also appeared in shows like Charlie's Angels and The Fall Guy. He also died in 2019. He was 91 at that point. And Hal Lynch was an air police sergeant, the one who was beamed up to the Enterprise and froze.
Right.
He also appeared in shows like Bonanza and the FBI, and he's our Columbo connection this week, because for 2 years between 1968 and 1970, so after this and before Columbo, he was married to Joyce Van Patten.
Just the 2 years?
Yeah.
Oh, did he have a problem with his...
He had many wives and children from different... He didn't have any children with Joyce Van Patten. We had children with a number of his other wives. He, according to... Sorry, Joyce Van Patten was the killer in Old Fashioned Murder and also appeared in another episode of Columbo as a nun. According to IMDb, anyway, as far as you can trust that source, Lynch's friends described him as a minor racist.
What's that minor racist?
Well, here we go. Who had a habit of shooting at black people from his back porch with his gun. So it makes you wonder what his friends would call a major racist.
A minor racist?
Yeah. It's minor racism just to shoot at black people. That's minor racism, apparently.
You don't get a minor murderer.
Well, no, exactly. Yeah, it's not something that was really scale of, is it?
We should, of course, say that this is on IMDb, and if you've in any way defamed him, then
you can't defame someone that's dead.
You can't, no, but it sounds like it might be made up. He was a minor racist. He was a
known racist who sat at his house and shot at people.
A well-loved racist.
To get him to move on.
Yeah. Oh, well.
Anyhow, his story has a somewhat ironic ending.
Is he dead?
He is dead,
Yeah, good.
So we can't defame him. On the last day of his life, he handed in his newspaper column, picked up his dry cleaning and phoned the police to report a shooting at his home before shooting himself at his home.
And leaving a note saying the black guy did it?
He didn't, as far as I'm aware, do that.
Sounds like the type of thing he might have done.
It was ruled as suicide, and he died at the age of 78 in the year 2006.
Good riddance.
Well, if true.
If true. If not, sorry.
If not, that's a shame, yeah. Trivia beyond that. So, we talked about the great predictions relating to the first manned moon mission. There's a couple of strange coincidences around the date of this episode. So later in 1967, I referred a couple of times to black holes. Kirk called them black stars because the term black hole wasn't invented till later in 1967 by the physicist John Archibald Wheeler. The airbase footage is from George's Air Force Base in California, and the plane that is shown was actually lost over Thailand 10 days before this episode aired.
Really?
Yeah,
that's
that exact plane.
That's good trivia. Like that, yeah.
And just a few days, I think, after this episode aired was the catastrophic Apollo 1 fire that killed 3 astronauts in the pod on Earth. Grissom and a couple of others, I think Gus Grissom and a couple of others were killed in that accident. So there's a lot of tie-ins on major events relating to that period of time around the airing of this episode. One other interesting piece of trivia, in lieu of international titles, which I don't have for you this week, because we just don't have time, I'm sorry. But this was originally intended as a second part to The Naked Time, which ended with time travel, as you recall. Remember, we kind of called that out as a odd ending. I think if they'd run those two together, that would have been fantastic.
Yeah.
That would have been great, a two-parter, but they didn't do it.
They didn't think that far ahead.
Well, it was kind of thought and then aborted as an idea, but it ties in nicely with the ending of that one with the time travel, the beginning of this one with the time travel. If you've watched them with that in mind and kind of ignore the very end of Naked Time, then it works out quite nicely.
Makes sense.
Next time, we have the 20th episode of Season 1, Court Martial, which I think is the last one to be seriously out of place from when it was the 15th one filmed. So
right.
After that, we're all into the later filmed ones.
Okay.
We'll see how this one goes. In the meantime, you can get hold of us social media in the usual ways at Trek Podcast, and please tell all your Star Trek loving friends online and elsewhere about the podcast and encourage them to listen if you can. We would very much love that to happen.
Until then,
cheerio.
Bye bye.